All right, Jason, this may not be the perfect day to do this topic because Evan Mobley came back yesterday and the Cavs still lost. But we decided to do this prior to the game, and I think you can make a strong case for both sides of this one, Jason. And you can go first. But who is the most important player on the Cavs this season? Not who's been the best, not who is the best, not who will be the best at some point, but who is their most important, irreplaceable player right now? Is it Evan? Is it Donovan Mitchell? Or is it someone else?
Well, it's definitely one of those two. And I kind of went back and forth. We've had the conversation for years, and I think you and I have been in lockstep on this. They are not a viable championship contender until Evan is the best player on the team. I've said that since this thing started to turn. And here they are, they're viable championship contenders for sure. And I think it's worth asking, is Evan the best player on the team? I don't know that he has surpassed Donovan yet, but he's closing the gap very, very quickly. And I think you can make a case for their 1 and 1A right now. And there is no formula for how a passing of the torch happens on, I think both players come to the realization of it. And I think that there is a concerted effort on the floor to prioritize or make one the focal point of the other. The reason why I think Evan, is the most important player. I don't know. I think it's two different conversations, best and most important. I know it sounds silly because your best player should be your most important player. Honestly, I'm not sure who the Cavs' best player is right now. If is it Donovan or is it Evan? But I know that there's one guy who can win you a game at both ends of the floor, and it's not Donovan Mitchell. And for that reason, I do tend to believe that you can make the case that Evan is the most important player because when his shot isn't falling, and again, last night's not a great example of this because he was not as forceful on the boards as he needs to be. But Evan can win you a game defensively, and he can win you a game with his athleticism and just some of the plays he can make. I texted you. I was watching the first half, the one play about late in the first quarter. The Clippers, I can't remember who it was, threw a lob to the rim, and Evan just throws a wing up there and snatches it out of the air, drives the length of the floor, and banks it off the glass at the other end. There are less than 10 players in the league who can do what he did on that play.
Those years he spent with Steve Kerr really benefited him.
Mobley can run the show a little bit, and part of that conversation was to unlock Mobley and have him be kind of like
those years.
And guys who could do that in the league. And Donovan Mitchell's not doing that. Jared Allen's not doing that. Jared can win you a game at the defensive end. He can help win you a game at the defensive game. And Jared's not going to win you a game at the offensive end. Donovan certainly can shoot you to wins, but Donovan's not going to be the defensive player at the other end of the floor. He's not known. If you're counting on Donovan Mitchell to make defensive stops to win you a game, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's just the reality of where they're at. And same with Darius, really. So for that reason, because he's a triple threat, because he can usually hold his own on the glass, he's so incredible defensively. He can guard 1 through 5. He can make plays like you just saw, go on the length of the floor and bank it off the glass. The shooting is coming around. The offense is coming around. He can create for himself now that he could never do before. Yeah, I do think that Evan's the best or the most important. I don't know if he's the best. And maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't know if he's the best yet, but he's close if he's not. But I do think he's the most important.
He's definitely not the best yet, in my opinion. I think he could surpass Donovan here next season. I think I need to see it for more than 1 year before I anoint him over a guy who's about to be a first-team All-NBA performer. And Jason, while I agree with you, I'll tell you why, but then I'm going to make the case for Donovan because I do think this is a very tight conversation. But just for context, this season without Evan Mobley, in the 8 games he's missed, the Cavs are 5-3. That's a 62.5% win percentage. Overall on the season, they are now 56-12, which is an 83% win percentage. So with Mobley compared to without Mobley, it's about a 20-point differentiation in win percentage. Since 2022, so in this iteration of the Cavs, since they acquired Donovan Mitchell, they are 27-16 when Evan Mobley does not play. Once again, a 62.5% win percentage. Overall, they're 155-77, which is a 72% win percentage, 10 points, higher than the overall record without Evan Mobley. When you look at the Cavs roster, I think the reason Mobley is even more important than Donovan is when Evan isn't in the lineup, your backup big is Tristan Thompson.
Yeah.
And when Donovan's not in the lineup, that means Ty Jerome gets those minutes. And when Ty Jerome has been asked to play those minutes, he has performed at arguably an all-star level. He essentially averages 21, 6, and 6 in games where he's asked to play over 25 minutes per game, a la games where Darius or Donovan are not in the lineup and not suited up. So because of the fact that there is a suitable replacement if Donovan doesn't play, and there is, with all due respect to Tristan, a gigantic ocean-sized gap between when Evan doesn't play and who they have to rely on elsewhere, I think Mobley gets the edge and who's more important. But let me make the case for Donovan, because I don't want to take anything away from Donovan. He's having an incredible season. We have seen Donovan last season against Orlando single-handedly carry an offense in a playoff game.
Yep.
And come playoffs, regular season be damned, the best players in the playoffs are the guys who can get a bucket when needed. When the defense is locked in, not just for the final 5 minutes of a game, but for 42 of the 48 minutes. And defenses are scouted better. And they are more focused and hyper-focused on taking away what you want to do best. And they know what parts of the floor you want to attack. And do you have a counter to their counter? And we haven't seen Evan yet be in a situation to where he's one of the 3 guys that are on the top of the scouting report. The other team's going to know every single one of his tendencies. Does he have an answer to that? We know Donovan does. We saw it last season against Orlando in the playoffs. We saw it early against the Celtics before he got injured and missed the final 2 games of that series. And sure, Mobley played awesome in that series. I'm not taking anything away from it. But they don't get to Boston if it's not for Donovan's offensive heroics against Orlando, which single-handedly carried an offense that saw Evan disappear at times, that saw Darius disappear. Jared Allen was out. It was Donovan and a cast of nobodies in that series in terms of how they were playing, and they still reached the Eastern Conference semifinals. So in terms of importance, the number one most important thing you need to win a playoff series is a bucket getter and a tough shot maker. And we have yet to see from anyone else on the Cavs roster not named Donovan that they can come through time in and time again in a playoff scenario against a good team, deliver at that level. And until someone else shows me they can, I don't know if I could put anyone in a more important role than I can number 45. Even though I just agreed with you, Jason, the answer is Evan Mobley because the backup is Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was just sitting there thinking as you were talking, you need a bucket, game on the line. Where are you going? Who are you giving it to? And it's probably 45. 45. You can make a case for Darius given the clutch numbers.
I think real quick, sorry to cut you off, Jason.
No, go.
Against Orlando, I thought part of their downfall down the stretch was Donovan was a little too assertive. And I actually thought they should have deferred, and the Cavs become more guardable in those situations when anyone, not just Donovan, it was Donovan against Orlando, but when any of those guys becomes too heliocentric offensively down the stretch. They're at their best when you don't know which way they're coming from and who's going to be the focal point of the offense. And I think that's what's made them so dangerous in the clutch this season.
Well, they lost the game. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they lose the game? Donovan scored 50 against Orlando and they lost.
No, that was game 5, I thought. I'll double check.
I thought they lost the game that he scored 50. I'm almost positive.
Oh, that was game 6. You're right. That was game 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes to show a lot of times. I remember having this conversation when it happened. And
it was game 6. You're right.
Yeah. I remember people were upset with Donovan that he wasn't passing more. I'm like, guys, there's a reason he's not passing more. He doesn't trust anybody else to make the shots. Like when you get in situations like that in a playoff game, when a dude's going for 50 plus in a playoff game, a lot of times because he didn't trust anybody else to make a shot. So he knows he's got to do it all himself. And then you wind up in situations like that where you score 50 and lose because the offense is so one-dimensional. And that's going back to what I originally asked. Late game situation, you need a bucket. Where are you going? I think it is Donovan, but the fact that if you're another team, you do have to have in the back of your head. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's going to Donovan. There are options. I think right now, as we sit here right now, I think they have options. They could go to Evan. They could go to Darius for that last shot. More than likely, it's going to be Donovan. But just the fact that defenses can't load up on him now, and just automatically assume that's where it's going. I think one of the beauties of this team and how unselfish they are. If a team sends 2 or 3 at Donovan, he's going to have no trouble making the open pass to one of those other guys for the shot.
I think Darius, based off the numbers, should be the NBA's clutch player of the season this year.
Yeah.
I'll die on that hill, and I don't think he's the Cavs' best option late in the game. So take that however you want to take it, it's a great problem for Kenny Atkinson to have.
Yeah.
And I'll die on the hill that when they become predictable in the clutch, that's when they're stoppable. When they are unpredictable and they mix up who's the focal point of the offensive possession, that is when they are at their best. Yeah. And it was a perfect example against Orlando where they actually got some good looks. They just missed those shots. It was Donovan, and then Donovan again. They ran one play for Max Strus, and guess what happened when Strus got that shot, Jason? Great look. He cashed it. I think the Cavs are at their best in those clutch moments when it's a 3-headed, 4-headed attack as opposed to one guy just trying to take over.